Player Will.
Welcome back, Visions fans. Buddy Player Will here. This is some content I'm trying to get back into. It's just some very basic vision card analysis, talking about the applications, the stats, what I think of the attributes themselves, where it can fit into your team, and realistically, how can we arrive at some kind of conclusion of whether you should pull or not. So we'll see if we can at least help answering that. And so this new vision card to both Global and JP is the Twinkling Stars Holy Night vision card that came out here with Winter Wrath. So let's kick things off just looking at the actual vision card itself. The stats on here, 361 HP, 142 magic. Both of those are pretty much in line with what you normally see. I don't think either of those are strong considerations for the value of this card. 4 Spirit is nice. That's certainly some sprinkles on top, but I don't think that really changes the analysis and considerations of this vision card either. But when we get into the effects itself, there's a couple things to look at, and I have this broken out here between unit effect, the party effects, and the Holo effect of where it gets applied in the certain game mode. And so the first unit effect here is 18% magic for any unit that puts it on, regardless of the weapon type. So 18% magic, boom, for free. If you are Winter Wrath, Loartha, or Ramada, the winter versions of all three of them that are pictured on this card, you also get 10 AoE res and 10% HP. Out of these three units, Winter Wrath is really the most feasibly used of them, so she's really the one getting the upside of these extra bonus stats. We'll circle back on that later, though. And the party stats are obviously constrained to the job types, which for this we'll talk about in a second, but they are Mace, Greatsword, and Fists. And so for those three types, you get HP 30%, 15% agility to the party, and debuff weakening of 20%. In addition to that, if you have this card equipped in all kinds of... Sorry, a little edit there. It's more than just arena. It's really anything in the duel mode. So that's class match, that's quick pick, things of that nature. If you have this card equipped, the jobs in that party will get reaction block 24% in that game mode. So that's part of the bonus effect of these new Holovision cards. Now, in addition to that, there is an ability on this card that is a triple hit Pierce type attack that virtually all Mace units in the game can use. 28 AP, it removes shell on that target unit. We'll circle back on the value of this as well, but it does have an ability which is kind of rare for vision cards, just generally speaking. Again, those three types are Mace, Greatsword, and Fist. And in addition to the dual extra effect here to these units, and it's only for these units, there is an additional Holovision benefit that affects all characters in the dual type modes, not just the job type ones. And that is a bonus of 1 Spirit and 2% magic res. I don't think either of these stats are worth anything at all whatsoever. These permanent Holovision effects for all the units you'll ever bring into Arena, relatively mundane. I don't think it's really going to change anything. But so now that we've kind of looked at the card, let me highlight some of the things that I think are noteworthy about it. Number one, agility 15% is one of the most valuable main vision card stats you can hunt for. Absolutely, this makes this card a very worthy consideration on that alone. But there is more to explore because although 15% agility is nice, there are already agility vision cards that exist for these classes, and Mace has 3 of them, Greatsword has 3 of them, and Fists has 3 of them, including this new one. So they had 2 prior, now they have a 3rd. So if they already have 2 existing, kind of begs the question, well, I have one for main slot and sub slot, do I really need a 3rd? We're going to answer that. The next consideration is that triple hit ability can be valuable for min-maxing high score PvE content, potentially where any Mace unit you bring to that, if you want to throw a triple hit into the wrinkle to build up those chains, this is definitely a consideration. There is some PvP usage, being frank, as well. I mean, the ability to dispel shell and have a triple hit on a Pierce type attack for Mace units is still a valuable ability. So for those Mace-oriented units, certainly a nice thing. Really just dependent if you're building a Mace team. But the final one here is about Winter Wrath in particular, and it is a nice little power creep bump for her, which she gets 10 AoE res, 18% magic, which is 72 magic for her. The 10% HP, which is the special bestowed effect, is 355 HP. But the actual party effects as well, that extra 30% HP, the 20% debuff weakening, they all kind of align to how Gumi envisioned building her in terms of bulking her up a little bit and having some counterplay to a lot of the dangerous mechanics like Black Rose the Helena's Magic Imperil, or the AoE Imperil, where she reduces your AoE by 1% as well, in addition to a variety of things. But let's circle back to point number 2 here on the existing vision cards. And this is where things really have to kind of play to your specific account, why it's tough to give recommendations. Because if we look at these 3 cards from a Mace perspective, do Maces need an agility card? The 2 that already existed were Bloody Road and Greater Demon, and they have some overlaps here. Bloody Road is Gun and Sword Knight. Greater Demon is Staff, Black Mage, Dagger, and Katana. This is where you're seeing some of the versatility here, though. Twinkling Star's Holy Knight is Fists and Greatsword, so it has completely different overlap with the other two Agility Vision cards. And so if you're building a Mace team, sure, Mace units can use any of these three at will, but you're constrained to who you have in that party with you to still get those benefits. And we're going to look at the same thing here for Greatswords. Do they need another Agility card? Well, they already have In Order to Change the World. That's the Hyo Vision card, and Zenith Beneath the Stars is the Soul Vision card. Now, there is some overlap here for Greatsword and Sword Warrior. They actually exist on both of those already, but kind of similar here, Fists and Mace are very much unique for how you might weave a Greatsword wielder into some of these teams. But then finally, the Fists, do they need an Agility card? And what you're seeing here is literally the same thing here, where a fearsome foe appears as Axe, Gloves, and Bow. Believers in the Bonds of Brotherhood is Spears and Staff Devouts, and Twinkling Star's Holy Knight is a completely different set of classes for Greatsword and Mace to combine with the Fists. So at the end of the day, it's not really a question of like, oh, you know, there's already 3 vision cards for each of them. It's that all 3 of these classes virtually overlap with different equipment types altogether, and that's where you have to do some self-reflection on your teams and what characters do you have, and do you have the upside of blending some of these teams with Greatsword and Mace and Fists that maybe you couldn't really do so easily before. But for now, this is JB79's infographic on the cards. Literally huge props to him. I will always shout him out for making these. It's probably my favorite resource in the game, quite honestly. And so again, you have your stats summarized here on the left. We have all the eligible units here on the right, and it becomes that question of, well, do you have any viable teams here that you think you might actually realistically build in terms of rainbow teams and lightning teams? I will circle back on that, but for now, just me personally, if I'm seeing which characters really pop off here for me, I look to see which characters do I see A, competing right now in the game where I'm playing, and B, do I see those characters competing in the relative short-term future as well? And I know for me, there's a bunch of them here still that where, you know, I'm in Holo at the moment. I've been in top 10 for quite some time, if not top 3, and you still see a lot of these units with decent enough frequency. Maybe not Hyo, I got some copium there. But there's really 2 key characters I do want to focus on here that I'll hyper-focus on the last slide, and that's about the considerations to pull. Really looking at that lightning element, to me, number 1, if you have a seasoned lightning account where you have the majority, if not all of these units, and you intend on pulling Astrius in the future, the new unit that's coming out in the next, who knows, month or 2, then yeah, you know what, these units, you could make some viable parties here. There's definitely some cost-limited content where you might lean into some of these lower-cost units. It's not ideal, and you could probably still get away with the mono lightning cards if you're trying to build a mono lightning team. But lightning only has one 15% agility card at the moment. There is an 8% agility card on the Europa Vision card, but if you are seeing a mix of these units that you use more frequently, then yeah, I could see this card working for you. To me, the other thing is if you've invested heavily into regular Raph, the Dark Raph, and she's a Mace unit as a tank that you can easily build around, and we'll just go back to this slide here, that she is very much the driver for many of these teams. And so if you have a Raph that you use all the time, maybe you put some reincarnations into her from the Reincarnation Festival, then yeah, this is a vision card that will enable her to be a rainbow tank for more teams than she currently without this vision card, and obviously does a couple different things for her in terms of the extra debuff weakening and the HP that she doesn't get from those other Mace agility cards. But getting back here, you know, to me, if you very highly value dual content, I do think the 24% reaction block rate to the units on the vision card certainly is nice. I don't personally think it's a massive game changer for the average person, but for those that really genuinely try very hard in class match and quick pick and free match and all those things, this is a type of power creep for that area of the game that if that's something you're really working hard for every day, I could absolutely see this vision card having some value there. The other thing is here, if you have intentions on maximizing your time with Winter Raph in particular, the 70 cost unit that just came out, obviously she has some unique bonuses to her, but this is one of those cards where, again, if you kind of go back here and you're using her to, let's say, counter the magic meta that we're seeing throughout majority of the game, she in particular pairs very well with the new Astrius unit coming, who's also kind of a anti-magic bruiser. But as a Mace unit for her, this again adds another iteration of teams you can potentially put her in to help them win against that magic meta. So to me, that's another one. And the last one here is if you pull limited items as part of your strategy. Right now, Visior is very hard to come by. Holo Vision cards are obviously very expensive. A lot of people have come to the conclusion just that they'll pass on most permanent pool items and really save their Visior for the limited time stuff, which this does count as, which we will likely not see a rerun of this Vision card for maybe a year. from that perspective, I do think this card is a thumbs up in terms of a limited vision card, where again, one of the other things you always have to consider is simply just that you don't know what's going to be released in the future for great swords and fists either. For all we know, next month there could be another excellent fist unit that comes out, could be a new great sword tank that comes out. And so in terms of, what could happen within a year's time, that's one of those vision cards that you don't want to miss out on, where there is some really good stuff here to appreciate. So, it's not a recommendation should you pull or not, but these are some of the major things I'm considering when pulling that, if you check the box on 2 or 3 of them, might be worth the investment. But then again, at the end of the day, holo vision cards can be expensive. They are expensive. And unless you're already deep into the lightning element cast and intend on really using them as your hardcore element, or if you are already in the rainbow mix of things and really emphasizing mace units and characters like Raph, then there's definitely an upside here for this too, which I personally am a big fan of. I do think there's lots of mace teams that have some extra versatility. This card is a very important wrinkle in that. So that's my thoughts for now. Hopefully this was insightful. I'll talk to you all soon.